Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are tackling a question that feels, it's incredibly intimate, but is also, paradoxically, the biggest scientific black box we have.
Mm.
We're talking about the thing you're using to listen to me right now, the mind.
It's the ultimate recursive problem, isn't it? I
Yep.
mean, using the mind to understand the mind.
Exactly. But we aren't just doing a philosophical wander through the woods today. We were looking at the machinery. When you peel back the skull, metaphorically, please, what is actually happening?
Right.
Is it a computer clicking and whirring with logic gates? Is it a network like the AI we see in the news? Or, and this is the wild curveball our sources are throwing at us today, is it something else entirely? Is your mind actually a weather system?
That is the central metaphor we are exploring. It's called the dynamicist hypothesis. And for our deep dive today, we've got a stack of research here, primarily a really comprehensive review by Michael Riley and John Holden called The Dynamics of Cognition. And then on the other side, a very sharp, very critical counterargument from Chris Eliasmith titled Mind as a Dynamical System.
And this isn't just a polite academic disagreement. Reading through these, it feels like a battle for the soul of cognitive science.
It really is. You have the old guard, which is symbolicism, the idea that the brain is a computer.
The establishment.
The establishment, yes. Then you have the challenger, connectionism, which is the neural network model we hear about all the time.
Right.
And then you have this radical newcomer, dynamicism, which says, you're both wrong. The mind isn't a machine, it's a storm.
A storm of equations. I have to say, I love that image. But before we get swept away, we have a mission today. We need to figure out if this mind as motion idea is actually the scientific revolution it claims to be, or if it's just, as Eliasmith suggests, a seductive metaphor that kind of falls apart when you try to do the math with it.
Is it poetry or is it physics? That's the question.
So let's start where the science started. For the last, 70 years or so, we've been operating under the assumption that the brain is basically a biological laptop.
That's the computational theory of mind, or symbolicism. It really took hold in the 1950s with the physical symbol system hypothesis by Newell and Simon. And to understand why dynamicism is such a rebellion, you really have to understand how rigid the establishment view is.
Okay, so when we say computer, we don't just mean it's smart. We mean it literally processes symbols.
Correct. The core idea is that intelligence is the manipulation of abstract symbols according to formal rules. Think about algebra.
Okay.
You have X and Y. You don't need to know what X and Y actually stand for to solve the equation. You just follow the rules. If X, then Y.
So in this view, if I see a dog, my eyes take that visual information and they turn it into a symbol, like a line of code that says object, dog.
Precisely. And then your brain, the central processor, takes that symbol and runs it against a rule. If object to dog, then check is tail wagging. It's a serial process. Step 1, step 2, step 3.
This brings up the SOAR architecture that's mentioned in the reading. It sounds very corporate.
It is. The symbolic architecture is set up like a bureaucracy. You have perception, that's the mailroom.
Right.
They take the messy outside world, package it into neat symbols, and send it up the elevator. Then you have central cognition, the CEO.
The boss.
The CEO. And he sits in a windowless room, looks at the symbols, makes a decision based on the rule book, and writes a memo.
And the memo goes down to the basement.
To the motor system, the muscles.
Yeah.
The CEO says, pet the dog. The muscles execute. But here is the key, and this is what drives the dynamicist crazy. The CEO has never seen a dog.
Wait, what do you mean?
The CEO has only ever seen the symbol for dog.
So there is this massive gap between the thinking part of me and the physical world I live in.
That's the transduction problem. In the symbolic view, the mind is a logical engine that is completely separate from the body and the environment. It's a brain in a vat, just processing code.
I have to admit, that just feels wrong. When I'm playing basketball or even just reaching for my coffee cup, I don't feel like I'm analyzing symbols. I feel like I'm flowing.
And that is exactly where the critique starts. The first big problem is time. Real life happens in real time.
And computers happen in clock ticks.
Exactly. A computer waits for an input, processes it, gives an output. It's all in discrete steps.
Yeah.
But imagine a baseball player hitting a fastball. The ball is moving, the player is moving, the wind is blowing.
Yeah.
The player doesn't have time to take a snapshot, convert it to a symbol, send it to the CEO, wait for a decision, and then swing.
By the time the CEO reads the memo, the ball is in the catcher's mitt.
Right. The process has to be continuous. The perception and the action have to bleed into each other.
Yeah.
You are adjusting your swing while you're seeing the ball. The symbolic view struggles immensely with this kind of continuous high-speed feedback loop.
And then there's the homunculus problem. I always find this one kind of funny, but it's actually a serious logical flaw.
It's the fatal flaw of representation. If you say, I have a picture of a dog in my head, or I have a symbol for a dog, the immediate question is, well, who is looking at the picture?
It implies there is a little man, a homunculus, sitting inside my brain watching the screen.
And then you have to ask, how does his brain work? Does he have a smaller man inside his head reading his symbols?
It's turtles all the way down, infinite tiny men.
Exactly. It's an infinite regress. Dynamicists argue that if you want to explain the mind scientifically, you have to get rid of the little man. You need a system that organizes itself, a system that works without a boss reading a rule book.
So we need to fire the CEO.
We need to burn down the office building entirely.
Okay. Enter the dynamicists. This is where the source material shifts from logic to physics. The core idea here is mind as motion.
This is a radical shift in perspective.
Yeah.
We're moving from static snapshots, like a photo, to trajectories, paths that change over time, like a movie.
Okay, help me visualize this. If symbolicism is a calculator, what is a dynamic system?
Think of a Watt governor. It's an old mechanical device used on steam engines to control speed.
Okay.
As the engine spins faster, these heavy metal balls fly outward due to centrifugal force. That physical movement pulls a lever that closes the steam valve, which slows the engine down.
Right, I think I've seen diagrams of this.
And there is no code. There is no symbol for too fast. There is no rule book that says if speed is greater than 100, then close the valve. The speed itself physically causes the valve to close. The system is coupled.
Coupled. That word comes up a lot in the Riley paper. Coupling. What does that really mean here?
It's the most important concept. In a computer, components take turns. In a coupled dynamical system, variables change simultaneously and influence each other instantly.
Okay.
Think of your arm and your eyes when you reach for that coffee cup. Your hand starts shaping itself to the cup before you touch it. Your eyes are updating the position of your hand, which updates the muscles, which changes the view for the eyes.
So it's not see, decide, move. It's see, move all at once.
It's even tighter than that. It's C-move. It's one system. You can't separate the vision from the movement. They are mathematically interaction dominant. The feedback loop is so fast and so tight that talking about cause and effect just stops making sense.
That feels messy,
Yeah.
but also accurate. So if we aren't using logic rules, what are we using? The paper talks about state, space, and attractors. We need to decode the jargon here.
Let's look at the map. Imagine a landscape, a giant rolling terrain with hills, valleys, and ridges. This is your state space.
And what does the map represent?
Every single point on that map is a possible state your system can be in. For a steam engine, the map is simple: speed and pressure.
Right.
For a human, the map is, well, it's almost infinite. It includes being hungry, running, solving math, feeling anxious.
Okay, so I am a dot moving across this landscape.
You are a trajectory. You are always moving. You never stop. Now, this landscape isn't flat. It has gravity. There are valleys. We call these attractors.
Because the ball wants to roll into them?
Exactly. An attractor is a stable state, a habit, a preferred behavior. Think about walking. You have a natural walking speed. If I push you to walk faster, and then I stop pushing, you will naturally settle back down to your preferred speed. You roll back into the attractor.
So my coffee addiction is just a really deep valley.
The very deep, very stable basin. It takes a lot of energy to push you out of it. And on the flip side, you have repellers. These are the peaks of the hills, unstable states. You can't balance on the top of a hill for long. You eventually roll down one side or the other.
This makes sense for physical things, like walking. But does it work for decisions, for thoughts?
Dynamicists say yes. They argue that making a decision isn't a logical calculation. It's a bifurcation.
A bifurcation? That sounds painful.
It's just a fancy word for a split or a sudden change in the landscape. Imagine you're on a treadmill. You start walking slow. That's a stable attractor.
Yep.
Now I crank the speed up. You walk faster. Still walking. But at a certain speed, you physically cannot walk anymore. You snap into a run.
Oh, right. I didn't decide to run. The walk valley disappeared and the run valley appeared.
Exactly. A quantitative change. The speed of the belt forced a qualitative change your gait. The dynamicists argue that thinking works the same way.
How so?
You don't process data until you reach a conclusion. You have competing attractors. Order pizza or cook salad. As you get hungrier, which is a parameter change, the landscape shifts until one valley disappears and you snap into the other.
That feels surprisingly relatable. Sometimes I don't feel like I make a choice. I just sort of fall into one.
That is the seduction of dynamicism. It intuitively matches our experience of going with the flow.
But intuition isn't science. We need proof. And this is where the Riley paper really shines. It gives us these 3 case studies. These are the battlegrounds where dynamicism tries to kill the computer metaphor.
And the first one is a classic, the A not B error.
I remember reading about this in Psych 101. It's with the babies, right?
Yes, it's a standard developmental test. You take a baby, maybe 8 or 10 months old, your 2 buckets, A and B. You hide a toy under bucket A. The baby reaches for A and finds the toy.
Okay.
You do this a few times. A, reach, find. A, reach, find.
So the baby is learning the toy is at A, building a concept.
That's what you'd think. But then you make the switch. You let the baby watch. You put the toy under bucket B.
Okay, they see it go to B.
But when you let them reach, they reach for A.
Even though they saw it go to B, that's weird.
Even though they saw it. Now, the traditional symbolic explanation, the Jean Piaget view, is that the baby is broken. They lack the concept of object permanence. Their internal code says toy is linked to action A. They don't have a symbol for toy that is independent of their own movement.
Error 404, logic not found.
Basically, the baby's stupid. But Thelen and Smith, the dynamicists, said, wait a minute. What if there is no concept? What if there are no symbols at all? What if this is just math?
How does math explain reaching for the wrong bucket?
They modeled it as a dynamical field. Think of it as digging a hole in the sand. Every time the baby reaches for A, they are digging that hole deeper. They are creating a strong motor memory high activation.
So the A attractor is getting deep.
Very deep. Now, you show the toy at B, that visual input starts to dig a little hole at B, but it's a shallow hole because it's new. Now, here's the kicker. Memory decays over time.
Like a hole in the sand filling back up.
Exactly. If you let the baby reach immediately, the visual B signal is fresh and strong. They reach for B, they get it right.
Okay.
But if you force the baby to wait just 3 seconds, the B signal fades, it decays. But the A signal, that deep, deep habit, it's still there.
So the baby reaches for A not because they think the toy is there, but because their arm just remembers going there.
It's a trajectory winning out. Thielen and Smith proved this by changing the baby's posture. If you make the baby stand up instead of sit down, the A habit is disrupted, the error disappears.
Whoa, wait, just from standing up?
Just from changing the physical system. If it was a concept in the brain, standing up shouldn't matter. You don't lose your knowledge of algebra just because you stand up.
Right.
But because it's a physical dynamic habit, changing the body changes the mind.
That is devastating for the computer model. It completely dissolves the line between knowing and moving.
It does. It suggests knowing is just a stable state of moving.
Okay, let's look at the second case study. Speech perception. This one blew my mind because I realized I do this every day.
This is about hysteresis, which is a fancy physics term for history dependence.
Meaning, where you are going depends on where you just came from.
Right. So take the words say and stay. The only difference is a tiny silence gap after the is. If the gap is short, you hear say. If the gap is longer, you hear stay.
Simple enough?
But it's not. If I play you the word say, and then I slowly, incrementally make the gap longer, you'll keep hearing say way past the point where it should sound like stay.
I'm stuck in the say valley.
You are stuck in the attractor. But if I start with stay and shorten the gap, you'll keep hearing stay way past that same point.
So there is an overlap, a middle zone where the exact same sound could be say or stay, depending on what I heard 10 seconds ago.
Exactly. This is a B stability. The system has 2 possible stable states. A computer would just measure the gap. Gap equals 50 milliseconds. Output is stay. But a human carries the baggage of the immediate past.
This explains so much about arguments.
How so?
You know when you're arguing with someone and you're in the angry attractor, even if they start making sense or they apologize, you can't just snap out of it instantly. You have hysteresis. The history of the last 10 minutes is holding you in that anger valley.
That is a perfect application. Emotional inertia. The landscape has to tilt significantly before you can bifurcate back to calm. You can't just flip a switch like a logic gate.
It makes us feel very biological, very mechanical, but in a fluid way.
And that leads to the third and probably the weirdest case study, the pink noise phenomenon.
This one was tough to wrap my head around. 1/feek scaling.
Think about reaction time. If I ask you to press a button every time a light flashes, you aren't a metronome. Sometimes you're fast, sometimes you're slow.
I'd assume that's just random error. I got distracted or I blinked. It's noise.
That's what symbolicism assumes. The CPU is perfect, but the body is noisy. White noise, random static. But when researchers actually analyzed the data over long periods, they found it wasn't random at all. It was pink noise.
Which means it has a pattern.
It means it's fractal. The waves of variation over seconds look like the waves over minutes, which look like the waves over hours. It's self-similar across timescales.
Why does that matter?
Because simple, independent components don't make pink noise. Only complex interaction-dominant systems do. It suggests that the wobble in your reaction time is connected to the wobble in your mood, which is connected to the wobble in your digestion.
It's all one big hum.
Riley argues this is the smoking gun. It proves the system is interaction dominant. You can't break the mind into little modules like vision and memory and motor. It is one giant, throbbing, coordinated system.
Okay, I'm sold. The baby isn't thinking, it's moving. My hearing is history dependent. My reaction time is a fractal heartbeat. The dynamicists have one. The mind is a storm. Oh, come on. Don't do this.
I have to. We have to talk about Chris Eliasmith. Because right now, we are high on the romance of the storm. Eliasmith is here to remind us that storms don't know how to do algebra.
This is the Empire Strikes Back segment. What is his problem with all this beautiful theory?
He has three main critiques, and they are brutal. The first one is the metaphor trap.
It sounds cool, but it's not science argument.
Exactly. Eliasmith looked at how people use dynamicism, especially in fields like clinical psychology, and he says, you guys are just using fancy words.
Like saying, my life is in chaos.
Right. In math, chaos has a very specific definition involving sensitivity to initial conditions. In psychology, it just means messy. Eliasmith argues that just because you can draw a picture of a landscape with valleys doesn't mean you have a mathematical model of the brain, you have a metaphor.
It's like poetry. It helps me understand the feeling of the mind, but it doesn't tell me how to build one.
And that leads to his second point, the lumped parameter problem. This is where the math gets really shaky.
Explain this one.
Okay, to make those beautiful differential equations work for the baby reaching, the researchers had to simplify a lot. They took millions of neurons, chemical synapses, muscle fibers, and they mashed them all together into a single variable called activation.
They lumped them.
They lumped them. Now, in physics, you can do this. You can treat a planet as a single dot. You don't need to track every single rock on Mars to plot its orbit.
But the brain isn't a planet.
Exactly. Eliasmith says, great, your equation matches the baby's arm movement, but what is activation? Is it firing rate? Is it voltage? Is it calcium ion concentration?
The equation doesn't say.
It doesn't say. So you have a model that describes behavior perfectly, but it tells you absolutely nothing about the brain. It's a black box. You've lost the biological realism in exchange for mathematical elegance.
So we know what the baby did, but we still don't know how the brain did it.
Precisely. But the third critique, this is the big one. This is the deal breaker for many people. The representation war.
The no symbols rule.
The radical dynamicists, like the ones who explain the baby, often claim that because the baby doesn't need a symbol for the toy, we don't need symbols for anything. They want to be anti-representational.
But I'm an adult. I'm not just reaching for buckets.
Right. And this is where the host needs to push back. Can you describe a unicorn?
Yeah. A horse with a horn. White. Sparkly.
Is there a unicorn in this room?
No.
So you are manipulating a concept that is not physically coupled to your environment. You are running a simulation. You're using a symbol.
I see what you mean. If I'm just a coupled system reacting to the world, how can I think about things that aren't in the world?
Exactly. Dynamicism is great for walking, reaching, and rhythm things where you are locked in with the environment. But how does a differential equation explain justice? How does a trajectory explain planning a vacation for next year?
It feels like dynamicism works for the body part of the mind, but it fails for the mind part of the mind.
Eliasmith argues that if you throw out representation, you're basically regressing to behaviorism. You're treating the human like a rat in a maze. Stimulus in, response out. Ignore the internal thought process.
And we know that's not true. I can sit in a dark room, perfectly still, and do complex math in my head.
And a system that is purely coupled to the environment shouldn't be able to do that.
So we're stuck. Symbolicism is too rigid. It's a clunky robot that can't dance. Dynamicism is too vague. It's a beautiful dancer that can't do math.
We need a bridge. And that brings us to the middle ground, segment 5.
Connectionism, the neural networks.
This is where modern AI lives. ChatGPT, Midjourney, DeepMind, these are connectionist systems. They are networks of nodes, simulated neurons, connected by weights.
Now, Elias Smith does something really clever here. He argues that connectionism is actually a Trojan horse.
A Trojan horse for who? For dynamicism. Think about a neural network. It processes in parallel. The nodes influence each other. It changes over time as it learns.
So, mathematically, it is a dynamic system.
Yes. A neural network is a high-dimensional dynamical system. It has attractors, it has state space, it has trajectories.
Does it have symbols?
It has distributed representations.
Okay, unpack that.
In the old symbolic view, you had one specific file for Apple, a single symbol. In a neural network, Apple is a pattern of activation across thousands of neurons. It's a vector.
So it's a mix. It's not one thing or the other.
The synthesis.
Yep.
You get the flexibility in the learning of a dynamic system. You get the ability to handle messy, real-time data. But you also get the ability to encode information, to represent the world, to compute.
So the brain is a computer, but it's not a serial logic machine. It's a dynamic vector processing storm.
That seems to be the verdict. Elias Smith concludes that dynamicism isn't the new paradigm that replaces everything. It's a normative tool.
Meaning it sets the standard.
It tells the cognitive scientists, hey, stop looking at static snapshots. Stop pretending time doesn't exist. You need to build your networks to evolve in real time.
Yeah.
It keeps the science honest.
It forces us to remember that the computer is made of meat.
Exactly.
This has been heavy, but I feel like I have a completely new mental model of myself.
It's a shift from I'm a logical operator to I am a biological trajectory.
So let's wrap this up with the so what. Why does this matter to the person listening to this on their commute? Why should they care about differential equations?
Because it changes how you handle your own life. If you think you are a symbolic machine, then when you fail, when you yell at your kids or eat the donut or procrastinate, you think, my logic failed, my code is breaking, I am bad.
It's a moral failure. I made a bad choice.
But if you view yourself as a dynamical system,
Yeah.
you understand coupling. You understand that your environment is digging valleys for you. If you keep the donuts on the counter, you are creating a deep attractor.
You can't just logic your way out of a deep valley.
No, you have to change the landscape. You have to move the donuts, which changes the parameter. You have to understand hysteresis, that if you are stressed from work, you are physically in a different state space when you get home. You can't just switch off. You need a transition. You need to account for the decay time.
It makes us less like robots and more like ecosystems. You don't program a garden, you tend it, you tweak the variables.
That is a much healthier way to be human.
I have one final, slightly terrifying thought to leave everyone with.
Let's hear it.
We talked about bifurcations. That moment where the landscape shifts and you snap from walking to running, or from calm to angry, or from undecided to decided.
Yes.
If that snap is just math, if it's just the inevitable result of variables shifting and the ball rolling into the deepest valley, what does that mean for free will?
That is the ultimate question.
Did I choose to record this with you? Or was my trajectory just caught in a strong attractor? Are we the boss making decisions, or are we just watching the weather system of our own minds unfold?
If the dynamicists are right, the feeling of deciding might just be the feeling of the system settling. The bifurcation feels like a choice, but it was mathematically inevitable all along.
Well, on that existential crisis, thank you for listening to The Deep Dive.
Keep your tractor stable, everyone.
Hey, next time.